Hey, Bayo, how's it going?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for coming to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We've met online a few days ago, actually, and I looked at your CV on LinkedIn, and I figured this is one voice we'd better not miss out on if speaking about things that happen in the startup world. I think you bring in a very exciting and a wholesome perspective into our conversation, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to start off with who you are, what do you do, and why do you do it?
So I'm Bayo Adelaja and I run a social enterprise called Do It Now Now. And essentially what we do is we are trying to empower Black people everywhere. And the verticals through which we do that are Black women, Black LGBTQ, Black non-binary, Black people in tech, and African tech entrepreneurs. So those are our focus demographics, and we'll keep growing. We're gonna do stuff with students eventually. We keep trying to do something and it keeps failing, but we'll keep going. But basically, we just want to make sure that we can bridge the disenfranchisement gap, excuse me, that is apparent in most developed countries as well as across Africa.
Can you repeat that long, big word who I've never heard before?
Disenfranchisement gap. The
What does that mean?
disenfranchisement gap. Basically, it's looking at the way that Black people tend to access resources, tools, support, high level positions, investment, all of the things that people need in their different fields, particularly to do in with entrepreneurship, leadership, or activism, being more active in your local arena, politically, economically, socially, culturally. The barriers that stop you from doing that, from being an active voice in your local system, and tech is one of the spaces that we do that in. So we are trying to ensure that people that we could the race that we are part of, our team, the majority of our team anyway, is part of, we're trying to empower that race to be an active member in the creation of the future in all of these different arenas.
I am very tempted to go into the how and the technicalities and also get to understand why you named your company Do It Now. But before we do that, I want to make sure that we cover the key motivation because startup land, the innovation ecosystem is hard, and you've chosen an even harder aspect of it. So working with disenfranchised communities, did I say it right?
Yes.
First learner, working with disenfranchised communities, and then you put on top the layer of innovation, of a commercial viability. So why do you do what you do?
When I first started Do It Now, I was trying to solve a problem that I faced. I still am a highly educated person with a lot of opportunities and a lot of privilege that I had growing up, with the people that my parents are, the friends that I had, the access that I had, and as I got more and more into the tech world, and as I got more and more into my professional life, I realized that there were a lot of barriers that I was facing that I shouldn't have logically faced, considering all the boxes that I did already tick. So I started Do It Now to solve a problem of access and resource for people like myself. And as I kind of went further into it, I realized that if we were going to see the world really change for the better, it required all of us. Our tagline, or our unofficial tagline, I suppose, is "The future needs us all." And I am a kind of a pseudo futurist in the sense that I really believe that the innovations that are going to change the world for the better are living in the minds of people who are too scared, too tired, too overwhelmed, and too poor to be able to actually action those ideas and turn them into viable innovations that will change the world. So we're just tackling the race that directly connected to us and kind of growing from there.
It's kind of like you faced a challenge and it puts you in a unique position to solve that challenge. And what you're saying, so many other people are facing their own challenges and they are the best positioned people to solve these challenges. Like
Exactly.
by scratching your own itch, you bring your biggest gift to the world. You said the access and resources have it already come up, I think, twice or three times in the short time we were speaking about. Is this code names? When you say access and resources, what does it really come down to?
Access is there's this really interesting story that there's a fantastic CNN anchor who I I can't remember his name right now, which is terrible because Van Jones, that's who it is. He went to Harvard Law School and he told the story of his experience there. And he was saying that he did all of his work, he got the grades, he was studying and doing what everyone had said you should do on the websites, on the posters, study hard to get there, apply for internships and all of that. But when he graduated, he realized that the rest of his classmates were being uh, kind of informally mentored by professors. And he wasn't receiving access to that level of privilege, those open doors, those locked rooms, because he didn't have anyone that would be able to take him into those rooms and give him access to that information, give him access to those introductions. So that is what access is. It's about being able to kind of see the source code behind the matrix and say, this is what it actually is. And so much of that is hidden behind kitchen table conversations or I don't know, dad at the country club mentioned this and like that's how I found out that this other guy at the country club works at Goldman Sachs and I mentioned that I needed an internship and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll get it, like just email me tomorrow. Those things don't happen as organically for people who live in low income areas, and what we're trying to do is hack that system and be able to identify people with the drive and the passion and the interest in specific areas and then give them the access to be able to exist and thrive in those areas. And then when it comes to resources, it is downright, do you have the tools? Do you have the, I don't know, Google Cloud credits to help you? Do you have the AWS credits? Do you have the lawyer that can have a 1 hour conversation with you about how you set yourself up? Do you have the training you need?
So we're not even talking about big money, investment, discrimination in how capital is being deployed. We're talking about super simple stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I was reading about ecosystem development a couple of years ago, and I was just fascinated by the way that ecosystems are built. And what we've decided to do is essentially reverse engineer ecosystem stakeholders and the parts of them that form them. This decentralized movement that we have in London, there's London Tech Week, there are all these tech hubs doing all of these different things. So what we're trying to do is basically reverse engineer all of that and place them at the feet of disenfranchised people who do not feel comfortable entering those spaces. One of my favorite articles that I've read recently is something called, it was titled, Black People Don't Go to Galleries. That isn't true. It was about Black people's experience of London specifically. That isn't true. Black people do go to galleries. But the author was talking specifically about low-income people, people living in low-income areas who feel viscerally upset by the whiteness that they see when they enter traditional galleries. Because it's a place that basically yells at you, you are not welcome here. And you have to have been comfortable enough for a long enough period of time in spaces like that to be able to survive in those areas. And that is what the tech space is. It's a boys' club. It is a white person's club. Typically, it is a lot of spaces that basically yell at you as you walk in the door and you see no one that looks like you, no one that's building anything that's culturally relevant to you because they don't understand you, no one that's building anything that you're building because they don't think what you're building is valid, because it is usually, if you're a person of color, you're building something that is solving a problem for other people of color because you are the one experiencing that problem. So it's a lot of different things that we're basically just trying to say, let's take the key parts of it and make it an orderly step by step program and allow people to access it in a way that is basically saying, this is for you, you can use this is how you get there. It is not a secret anymore.
I'm a very little expert on these topics, even having grown up in Israel. It's a melting pot. My grandparents on one side are North African, the other ones are Middle Eastern from Iraq. I grew up in a white environment, having been non-Caucasian, so Middle Eastern in that sense. But I do feel like I've been the one strategic decisions that my parents had made when they were bringing us into when they just got together was, we're going to get ourselves as far away as possible from where we grew up because we knew the lack of opportunities, how close we are to problematic areas of society, and they just changed the zip code. and it made a huge difference. They take on debt that enslaved them for 25-30 years, but they knew that this one change would create a difference. And what you're saying in a way is not everyone can choose the zip code. We need to recreate some of the successful ecosystems here.
Exactly.
What did you learn about ecosystem creation, and what did you already get to implement?
I learned that ecosystem development because I was reading it from the perspective of creating it from scratch. There's this fantastic theory called the 6x6 model by Stephen Coltai, and he basically says governments, charities, corporates, and INGOs as well as local NGOs being the charities, mind you, then startups, talent, and a bunch of I think those are the main six. Apologies if I'm misremembering, but if you find that those are done well enough and startups can have access to those, then you're basically giving them the foundation. Like you can't replicate grit, you can't replicate passion, you can't force someone to take on the mantle of being a startup founder, because not everyone is cut out for it, and I wouldn't it's not something I would wish on pretty much anyone. But you can give the people that do have that passion, that drive, and that entrepreneurialism about them the foundation that they need. What we've done is not take that specifically, particularly when we're looking at the Africa angle. It is very close to what we do with our with AfriTech XYZ, which is our virtual accelerator program that brings mentors from around the world and gives them access to information about Africa's development in the tech space, because as we all know, Africa is growing massively. It is the next tech frontier. There is a new scramble for Africa, and it's in a tech fashion rather than an enslavement fashion, which is interesting and fun and less painful, hopefully. But it is all happening, but there's so little information that's bridging that gap. There's so little happening between the rest of the world and Africa that is from an authentic perspective, rather than these are the big opportunities, these are the industries, these are the investment things, and these are the numbers. So what we're doing is pairing startup founders and their senior leadership teams with individuals. Some of them are investors. We've got about 120 mentors from across the world, so primarily UK, Europe, and US, and then some that are based in African countries as well. But they're lawyers, they are finance people, they're designers. They're basically people that believe in innovation and want to contribute to Africa's development. And we pair them up to give them that expertise, that one-on-one expertise. And then we also provide credits, like I was mentioning earlier. AWS credits make a difference. Google Cloud credits make a difference. The ability to talk to founders from other countries. So pairing founders from Nigeria with founders from South Africa or Kenya or Uganda to talk about the similar innovations that they're creating and helping them understand the differences in the markets.
How do you create I'm sorry to interrupt you, I'm just curious because I think it's a huge part. Illustrating you're sitting here in London and you're trying to connect places that are remote with bad connectivity, societies that are very communal, but when it comes to the ability to do work on an international scale, it's fragmented. How do you create the commitment with such a international cobweb of people?
When you say commitment, what do you mean?
120 mentors that are helping your customers, the people who go to the Africa XYZ Accelerator. How do you get them to commit to helping such a cause? How do you get those super busy, time-stressed individuals to give you some of their times and resources?
So it's built with that in mind. The way that the mentorship scheme works is built with the idea that those people are extremely busy. They don't have the time. They don't have the ability to kind of drop something and say, I'm going to take this on. And even the emotional labor of introducing someone to your life who you think, oh, this is now going to be something that could be a long-term relationship. I have to make space for that. It can be an anxiety-building thing. So the entire program is built with both groups in mind. What do the startups need, but also what do these mentors need? The way we've built it is to say, mentors, you're not giving more than 3 hours of your time every 6 weeks, and you're not talking to the same founder or same person or same team every single time. You can choose outside of the mentorship matches that we make to form relationships with people that you get on with. But what we're doing is a match for match based on expertise and need.
Got it.
So they need your expertise. You have that expertise. This conversation is a context-based conversation on can you tell me about branding? It's not, how are you doing today?
Got it. And that's basically giving the access that you described as being devoided.
Exactly.
So it's not about coming as an advisory board member. It's not about a weekly mentoring session. It's about those one, two, three conversations that can help transform a person's trajectory or a company's trajectory.
Exactly.
It's that 30 minutes after school where the teacher gives you.
Yeah.
We had Jay Richards on the show. I don't know if you know him.
Yes, I do.
So Jay described a situation where he was the person who got him out of his criminal activities was a teacher who said, "Listen, I recognize an entrepreneurial spirit about you. Let's see if we can channel these energies in a place more constructive. Let me show you how you can legitimately make money." And within a few hours, completely transformed Jay's story. So that's fascinating. But we're already in the kind of like the bird's eye view of what's going on. We're in Africa trends. We're already connecting the world. But before you did all of that, there was something else. There was your professional trajectory in your career that led you here now. Tell us a little bit about that. Your first job in tech. How was it like for you entering that space?
Well, my first job in tech was as a founder. I didn't actually know I was running a tech company. I watched, like everyone else, that I'm hugely embarrassed to say this was the reason I got into tech actually, but I watched the Social Network movie and I thought, ooh, I can be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Maybe that isn't what I want to be today, but that idea, that thing of you could be a university student, have a good idea and build it and just make something of yourself and test it and have fun with it and get your friends involved and make this thing happen. That film kind of made me feel like it was possible. Anything was possible.
Hey, I got to advertising because I wanted to be Don Draper, and halfway through the first season, I'm like, you know what? Advertising looks cool, but I don't know if I want to be this guy.
Yeah.
Though sometimes I have to admit, I still do want to be this guy. But it's funny because this touches on the expectation management when people enter. Like, okay, Mark Zuckerberg, it's a 1 in a billion.
Yeah.
Anyway,
not just that, but again, back to the thoughts on access and resource. I started this tech company. Didn't realize it was a tech company. I just thought I was building. Oh, it's a social network. And it was a social network for university students in non-creative degrees with a creative passion. So if you were a poet that was studying maths, this was a place for you to share your poetry, to sign up for poetry jams, to promote what you were doing. And it grew to 12 universities, 75 people on our street team, about 2,000 daily users. So it was pretty big. I know now. I didn't know that then. I thought I was just doing something. And I had no awareness of investment. I thought the only places that you could get investment were Dragon's Den and a business loan. And my parents didn't know anything about it either, and they thought I was just wasting my time and should be spending all of that energy on my degree rather than on
what was your degree?
Thing. I was studying English literature. I was not planning to be an English teacher. I had no idea what I was going to do after university. I just did something that would be a time saver, like a timekeeper. And so I just had all of this spare time and no real passion for my degree, and all of that passion found itself in this business. And the harder it got, the more I reached out for help, but there wasn't that help. No one I knew was doing anything similar.
The harder it got. It sounds like a passion project that got a little out of hand.
Oh, it was growing way too quickly. It was something I expected to like have a couple of people on, and like it was just going to be this fun thing. But suddenly we were in 12 universities. I was studying as well. I had friends, I had family, I was volunteering because I'm a big volunteering person. And I was doing this thing that just slowly took over my life. And my housemate was also building a business that was very early stage, and her parents gave her £10,000 just to like have fun with and let her go part-time on her degree so she could do it. And the thought of me going even part-time whatever on my degree was like a sin to my parents. So there was so much that I was just culturally coming up against, but my family couldn't help me, my friends couldn't help me, my university tried to help me, but they gave me £300 and said, there, like that isn't useful. in the long term.
That's enough to print a playbook. It's not enough to.
It just wasn't. It was, and the reason I got the £300 was actually because I entered a university competition. We came second. Another guy came first, who I'm friends with now. I found out that after he graduated, and by no fault of his own, he's a wonderful white man. But I found out that after he graduated, he joined an accelerator, and is now retired in Bali, and I am not. Not that it's not a life that I would choose for myself at 29, but I'm just saying that I had no idea accelerators existed at that time, but he did, and he was able to find that information and get that help where I wasn't. Despite all of the Googling in the world. So it's just little things like that. Kind of that experience and a horrible experience with an angel that I thought was going to buy my business from me. Turned out they were just stealing my business from me and all of the information attached to it. So those kinds of things kind of turned me off of tech and turned me into a social researcher. So yeah, I joined the London School of Economics.
I don't want to go to the London School of Economics just yet,
Sure.
because I think there's something important you said. You had an idea, you had a passion, you threw a lot of energy and resources, taking some risks because you were jeopardizing your degree into making this thing happen. And you had a problem that doesn't usually happen, and that is that you were going too fast.
Yeah.
What were you doing then? Like you realized, okay, this is bigger than me. What happened then? When did the angel investor came in?
It was, I suppose, when my brother started promoting it. That's when I knew that this was big, because my brother loves me, but he also is like, I'll wait for it to take off before I start like sending this to people. All of these people started needing stuff from me, and that was anxiety building because I wasn't prepared to give anything. I was just doing stuff.
Who are these people? What did they want?
So one idea that came across was, we should print an anthology, like of our poems, of our writing. We should like have our music in an album. We should do this. We should do that. Like all of these great ideas that would have made money, but I had no idea how to monetize anything. I was just like, this is a fun thing. Facebook is free. This is free. Cool. I had no idea what I was doing at all to any extent. I was just testing things, and my big love was building community. I wanted to know if I could provide something that people would want to use and continue using and find friends on. Like they would want to kind of build associations and build a bigger thing out of what I had created. And they did do that. They just did it at a much quicker pace than I was expecting. Though I don't think I set a pace, really. I just thought, this will just be a fun thing and I'll never really go anywhere. And then I said, I need volunteers to help me because this is way too much. Got a lot of volunteers, had no idea how to manage that many people.
And managing volunteers is different, because if you're managing a person, a salesperson, you're like, okay, sell more, sell less.
Yeah.
Say this, don't say this. They have to be at least somewhat qualified or motivated to do the role. But volunteers, it's a lot of abstract energy that's going everywhere.
Yeah, and it's you kind of have to keep them. You kind of have to keep the brand alive for volunteers to keep feeling, especially university students who need to pad out their CVs, So you need to keep the brand alive as to like, this is a big deal. This is why you should be involved. These are the resources, and they're comparing it to other organizations that friends are volunteering with and being street team for. So where are our flyers? Where are our jackets? Where are our pins? Where are our theater tickets? Where are like perks and things? And it's like, this is a one-man band from my dorm room. I don't have all of this to give you.
So you found yourself under many demands from many people.
Yeah.
Variety of things that you're being expected to do. Sounds very much like a startup. Yeah. Like not knowing what you've gotten yourself into, not being able to foresee what's coming your way, and not being able to tell what would be a good way to solve one problem or the next.
Yeah, exactly. And I just, at the point where I was starting to feel really very overwhelmed, I, as usual, turned to my mother for advice. And as usual, my mother's main piece of advice was quit and focus on your degree, because that's what she knew. A degree is a stable thing. It's something that gets you a job, and you get a job and you get paid well, and then you just buy a house and you live your life, and that's life.
Linear,
So, yeah, exactly.
predictable.
Yeah, no, and safe, which is very much what she wanted from me. She
Yeah.
didn't want these like highs and lows. I was calling her crying, I was calling her happy. She was just like, this is too much.
Do you still call her crying? Do you still?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
My
does she still send you? You should have gone back. You should get another degree.
no, yeah. Oh my gosh, she still sends me MBAs, PhDs, and masters. Like
They don't give up. They don't give up.
not at all, not at all. But yeah, it was a lot that she living so far away from me for the first time because I was 5 hours away at university, so it wasn't like an easy drop in. So she was just very worried all the time. So her advice was the best advice she could give, and I was just too tired to fight back and say no, this is what I want, because I knew I was passionate about it, but I didn't know why. I didn't know.
You're probably also at least starting to burn out.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes. That was yeah, and that's when I started looking for someone to take it over, and I read something about people buying companies, and that's when I read into someone had just graduated from I think it was my university. No, it wasn't my university, but a similar university, and he'd gotten about 250,000 from a former Dragon's Den judge. So this was like all of my connections in my brain as to how you make money were making sense.
Did it feel accessible to you? Did it feel like it's something that can happen to you?
I'm a Christian, so anything's possible. Like it was just like you never know what can happen.
Okay, so you had this idea, and it kind of like flicked a switch in your mind.
Yeah, I was like, okay, let's try this, and we'll see what makes like what comes of it really. And when I reached out to this company, and they were doing something kind of similar, but it was failing terribly, and I was just like, hey, and my inclination is always to say this is how you can make it better, based on my own experience. So I called up, got a meeting with the VP, and started talking to him about what he'd been building and what we were doing and how it was working for us, and they could maybe do something.
Why do you think he took that meeting?
I think people still do that with me. To be honest, they take meetings and or ask me for like follow-ups, and now I'm good at telling when you're just like wanting to find out how we do what we do rather than actually trying to like take a step further.
Back then, you had a side project that was going on,
Yeah.
was taking off. A VP. He sounds like an important person.
Oh, a VP in a startup.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like a VP type.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
VP,
Yeah,
VP.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. A VP in a startup. So he took the meeting, and we just started over the course of a year. We started having these like almost weekly conversations where I was updating him about what we were doing, how we were doing it, and he was talking about how what they were planning to do with their like at this point fledgling, I suppose.
Recording. You said recording?
Recording.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll get to that. But I didn't say recording just now.
Okay.
Calling.
Calling. Okay. I'm like,
Calling.
I heard recording. I'm like, ooh, that's a big red flag right there.
No,
Okay.
no. Okay, so no, I will get to that in a second though. So we were just having these weekly calls to like talk about everything, and we talk. Eventually, I got up the courage to say I would be really interested in you guys because I knew they'd just gotten all of this money. So I thought, okay, you guys can give me some money, and I could just give you all of the stuff that we've built, and we can tweak it, and you can just like use the information and the connections that we've made over this time period to build up what it is that you're building. And we finally set up a meeting in London because I was in Durham, he was in London, and it was the summer holidays. So we finally set up a meeting, and he just didn't show up to the meeting in person, and kept me waiting for 3 hours at the station. First it was, no, we're moving offices. Then it was, and I said, oh, I can help move. Like I can pick up boxes. Like I don't mind. I want to meet the rest of the team because that was what I was promised. I was going to meet the team. We were going to talk about the deal. We were going to sign contracts. That was what I was in London for. And finally met me at a Starbucks near the station. And then explained, we had a full conversation about like basically how I was winding up what I had been building to hand it over. And by that time, he pretty much wound it up. And he then said, at the end of this conversation, we're no longer interested in investing or buying it from you. And I was devastated in that moment, but then he left. And oh, I paid for the coffees as well, by the way, in the Starbucks. I always remember that I was like, shouldn't you try to pay for these coffees? Like,
Traveling in town with
yeah.
one set of expectations,
Mm-hmm.
waiting 3 hours, being pushed around with all sorts of excuses, finally meeting, you go through the conversation, by only at the end of it you get the news,
Yeah.
and you are also stuck with a £10 bill for the coffees.
And he had a notepad and pen. The only thing he brought with him to that coffee shop was a notepad and pen. And he was writing throughout the entire conversation. And so, like a day later or 2 days later, it suddenly dawned on me what had happened. That this guy had basically just been taking all of my ideas.
He downloaded your brain.
Yeah, pretty much. And I was like, oh, okay. That's not to be expected. So the reason I said I'd come back to recording was because I don't know if this was legal at the time, but I just had a recording app on my phone. Like I'm interested in technology, so anything new that comes out, I always try it out. And I just kept this app on my phone for about a year, completely unconnected to this particular situation. But I just so happened to have been recording literally every single call I had for a year. So I called him. He had not been picking up my phone, my calls for about a week. And I finally left a message and said, hey, I've been talking to my family about this, and I don't know if you know this, but I come from a family of lawyers, and they were saying that because all of the information that we've exchanged over email is still in my inbox and it's still tracked, and then I have all of these recordings, because I don't know if you know this, I just so happen to record all of my phone calls, I can prove if you implement any of the things that I've said over the past year. So either pay me or I will sue you.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's a combination of luck, resourcefulness.
Yeah, it was a lot. I didn't end up having to sue, probably because I didn't actually have a case and it probably was illegal to record. I don't know yet. I still haven't looked that up. But they fired him and then completely shut down that arm of the business, and eventually the entire thing was shut down like 2 years later. So yeah, that was my big entry into the tech world.
Welcome.
Yeah, right. So my reaction.
Can I ask how old were you when that happened?
I was 21. No, I was 20.
That's an expedited route into real life.
Yeah.
So after that point, you've already started what was a business, planning to sell it, being used, essentially, and then abused. Where did it leave you emotionally, energetically?
My thought was immediately, if this is what this is, then I don't want to be a part of it anymore. I love entrepreneurship. Like, I genuinely love business. I'm the type of person that if you talk about anything, I'm always thinking about how they're making money, how it works, why people are engaging with it. I just love all of that stuff. So I just basically decided to shut that part of my brain off. I was like, if this is obviously a bad thing, this is a bad world, these are bad people. And I came from a very sheltered home and background. So my understanding of the world was very black and white, in that these are bad people. This is not a thing that I want to be involved in a world that I should be trying to be involved in. And I don't want to get treated like that again. So I just, I would have ideas, I would write them down, and then I'd just throw them in the bin and just like leave them alone.
You had to go through a whole withdrawal of that world.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, the social network, being a motivation, but even that is a story of intellectual theft.
Yeah.
And if not straightforward theft, then a dispute. This part of the world was also represented, Hollywoodized, but represented in the story. Was it easy to ignore it, or just, it won't happen to me, or?
I think I was just so excited that someone could think of something that could change the world for so many people, that the actual legal aspect of it didn't really kind of dawn on me at that time. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just thinking about the fact that there was someone like that was in university, a young person, and again, black and white, very sheltered lifestyle. I just thought everyone was on the same playing field. I just thought, oh, he's a university student, I'm a university he was a university student, I'm a university student. I have an idea, why not go for it? I just thought the world was a lot simpler.
So naivety.
Yeah.
When does naivety serve you and when does it work against you?
I think it's really useful to be naive of the things that could harm you if in the moment you see the positivity, the positives of it. Like that story has happened again in my life. About a year ago, actually, something very similar happened, and I was able to deal with it a lot better. But the what I learned from it is there's this proverb that I don't know if it's an actual proverb, but it's in the Bible somewhere. Go with the man. If someone asks you to go 1 mile with them, go with them too. And it's basically about power and about the thought process of if someone that has power over you in a situation is unfairly asking you to do something that they have every right to ask you to do because of the power structure that already exists, just see it through. Honor the commitment, the power dynamics that are currently in place. Obviously, don't harm yourself, but honor the power dynamics that are already in place, but then maximize their trajectory and take it as your own. So if someone thought, oh, they were offering me something that was primarily beneficial to them, but I saw it as something that would be an opportunity for me to go with them on this journey. Despite I always try to see the best in people. In this particular situation in May of last year, I tried to see the best in this situation and went on this journey thinking this will be a good trajectory to at least see and follow, and then we'll see where it leads. I didn't know that where it would lead would be an even worse heartbreak than the first time around, but what it did was it opened me up to a new set of people. People I would never have gotten to meet, people I'd never have been able to access. This opportunity meant that I was able to speak to leaders in social investment that I would never, like, we didn't have those connections.
Did you regret getting into this whole thing at any point?
Oh, almost every day recently.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, I genuinely, there's a song by Labyrinth called Jealous, and I've been thinking about it recently. Just there's a lyric in it. I'm jealous of and it's the song is basically about you're jealous of someone that can be happy without you.
Oof.
Yeah.
You don't want to be on the losing side of that power
Exactly,
dynamic.
right?
Oh.
And I've just been thinking, like, I'm jealous of the person that I could have been if I wasn't this person. Like, if my entire brain and my entire life didn't surround itself around how can the world be better? How can we, like, push the future forward? How can we bring the people that have been disenfranchised further along? Would my life be better if I was one of the disenfranchised people that was being helped? I don't think so. But also the level of stress, or the type of stress, not the level of stress, but the type of stress that I'm currently feeling, I would rather not be feeling it. So yeah, I regret it a lot, but also I know that this is exactly who I am and this is what I'm supposed to be doing for my life. And I feel very confident in that statement. So it's very much however hard it gets, this is my life, and I'm just gonna suck it up and keep going.
But so I'm going to ask a challenging question, because some as a man,
Mm-hmm.
I identify progress with pain. If it doesn't hurt, I'm probably not working at it hard enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's very obvious how this mentality can fail a person.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell when the difficulty is legit, it's progressing the cause, it's promoting the cause, and when does the cost become too big?
For me, okay, so just going back to that song, because the reason I brought it up is the way it has resonated with me recently, and I love lyrics, so that's why I kind of meditate on songs. But the way it's resonated with me is that there are so many wonderful things that happen because I took the step and said I was doing this, because I lead the team that I lead, because I help the people that I help. There's so many incredible things that happen from me saying yes the first time and kind of building this thing and moving forward and walking through the doors that other people would have been scared to walk through.
Yeah.
The results have been amazing. The beneficiaries for the users, for like the people, for the whatever. All of this stuff has been
For
great.
yourself. This is
Yeah.
you're still not taking in paychecks, and so these are the tiny things that make it worthwhile. The opportunities, the people, the connection, the seeing the impact.
Yeah, so no, I am taking a paycheck, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, paycheck, like it's not. There's no exit strategy here. That's like this thing will buy me an island.
Okay, yeah. So it's not that, but it's very much like I wish I was as grateful for the company as everybody else seems to be, if that makes sense. Like I wish, like, because the sacrifices that I've made to my personal life, to my mental health, like for the past 2 weeks I've had so many panic attacks. Like those sacrifices that I make to my own personal well-being, and try not to get overwhelmed, try not to get burnt out, like work and then relax and try to like organize myself so that I am still in the best position to lead this. And then if I'm not, I'm moving it on to someone that can lead it, or finding the right people and doing all of that. I really recognize the toll that it takes on me as a person to lead this thing. And that is regrettable to me. But I'm grateful for the opportunities it brings other people. And I just wish I could spend more of my headspace thinking about that, rather than thinking about how we need to raise and how we need to pay people and how we need to kind of deal with the burdens that come with running a business that other people's livelihoods depend on.
That's the part of the entrepreneurial journey that's you didn't sign up for, but you cannot delegate.
Exactly.
You said about recognition. There's founders often have that senior folks in companies that they're not being seen. You're the one giving the shout outs. You're the one mentioning in the newsletter. You're the one distributing the credit. And when you're at the top, there's not necessarily anyone to do that for you.
I mean, actually, my team is kind of amazing, and because I feel uncomfortable talking about stuff that comes to me, and they kind of make a big deal out of it, and they're the ones that put it. Because if I ran the social media or newsletter, no one would ever know any of the good stuff that happens to me. But they're the ones that kind of make it a big deal.
They see you. They feel you. They want you high performing. They want to see you smiling. They wanna keep their leader in good shape. It's very empathic of them to notice that they need to do that this is part of their job.
I don't know if everyone else has been as open as I'm being in this conversation, but the reason, I don't know if this is their reason, but I lead with aggressive transparency. So that isn't to say that I cry on their shoulder, but they know when I'm having a hard time. They know what I'm dealing with, and they know what I'm trying to do.
This is huge. This is huge because in many corporate culture, professionalism is the ability to not show what you're feeling, to be able to go one room to the other, one conversation to the other, to do the context switching without anyone ever knowing what you're experiencing. Some leaders use authenticity and vulnerability as a tool, but in so many cultures, it is discouraged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't understand how you expect people to be able to. The startup world is genuinely messed up. Like the cultures that kind of imbibe themselves in startups, like the early stage, and kind of just don't get fixed as you get larger and larger. One of the big things that I wanted to do, and the motivation I have for everything is literally I want to change the world. I don't know if that's conceited, egocentric, or how that reads, but I want to see the world become a better place, and everything in my life is geared towards making that happen. And even the way I run my business is about that. One of my favorite stories of, I think it was last year or the year before, was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was looking to test the idea of maternity leave, paid maternity leave. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'll just give some examples. So they said, what we're going to do is pay 36 months of maternity leave for every person that is going on, that is having a baby. And so they did that. They tested it, they reviewed it, and they said, okay, this doesn't work. What we're going to do instead is give you a lump sum. And I think it was like $10,000 or something like that, and then like some more, some leave. But I really appreciate stuff like that. I really appreciate it when people can say, with this business is not just about like doing the things that we do. It's about building something that sees people, sees people as whole people, where they can bring their entire selves to work, but it also sees themselves as an example to the rest of the people that are going to be building businesses after this. I say to my team all the time, I don't expect you to be with us forever. I expect you to learn what you learn and then go off and do your own thing. If you don't want to, that's okay. But my expectation is that we're building leaders that will lead industries, that will lead their own startups, that will lead their own social enterprises. And we want to give you the tools to do that. So I'm supposed to be showing you an example of what a good startup or a good small social enterprise looks like.
We'll talk about the stressors in your professional life in a second. One of them might be that we impose on ourselves as pre-exit entrepreneurs some of the standards that people with deeper pockets and more experience and less to lose have. And if you're, how many people work for Do It Now?
7.
7 people,
including myself.
including yourself. So, like imposing the same standards that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation can impose on themselves in a 7 people organization that still needs to prove itself is very, very hard. And that's where some of the stress for founders come in, because you know what excellent looks like or should look like. You know the absolute best practice. But you have to live in a reality where a lot of things are burning, a lot of things are unattended, a lot of compromises. So how do you cope with the ideal, which for you is pretty huge, and a reality that often has to be mediocre in order to keep existing?
I show people where we're going. It used to scare me. I used to say I can sell a vision, but I don't know that I can back it up. And that used to worry me, because the backing up is where it actually lives, right? And so what I do is I tell them where we're going. And I know that we can't be there yet, but everything starts with a step, right? One of the things I say to entrepreneurs that we're working with is, I know it feels good to say I'm going to go from 0 to 60, but even that 0 to 60, it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. It just happens to do it very, very fast. So you just start with, this is where we are. This is where we will be. And we're just moving in that direction. I say it's the journey to being a grown-up business. And eventually we will get there. But for right now, I don't know that I like the term compromises but it's just the smaller version or a scaled back version that's more appropriate for where we are, compared to what we want to be able to do in the future.
Fair. And then you said, everything in my life is geared towards making that happen.
Yeah.
Does that make you a better entrepreneur, or does that work against you?
I think it makes me a better entrepreneur. It makes me a suckish person. Doesn't make me a good friend, which is awful. Doesn't make me a good daughter or a sister, but it makes me a good entrepreneur.
So what did you have to give up in order to be who you are now?
I said this to someone yesterday, and this is a bad thing. This is definitely a bad thing, and I wouldn't suggest anyone do it. I have never been on a holiday.
Never.
Well, after the age of 10.
But before 10, what can you use a holiday for? Like, it doesn't count. Doesn't count.
Yeah. I used to say, oh no, it's because I'm creating a life that I don't want a holiday from, like those stupid posters. They're dumb.
Oh, come on.
No, that is not true. Everyone needs a holiday, no matter how awesome your life is. Even if it's just for inspiration, to go to another space and see what other people do things. That's amazing. That's important. I was supposed to have my first holiday last year, and every time I look at it, I think about the work that I could be doing. I think about where I could be spending that money instead. I think about I could have a staycation instead and then just end up staying at home and working. I have a workaholic in me that is very, very, very much at the forefront of my personality, and I do try to bring that back. This past week, I've been doing my best to not work, which has been interesting, because, like I said, frequent panic attacks over the past 2 weeks. So I've been trying really hard to stay off of my computer and try not to work as much as possible, what I found myself doing is working on my phone because all of my work apps are still on my phone.
Why? Why are you? What scares you about not being available for doing work?
I don't know yet. That is something I'm now having to deal with and having to question because the panic attacks started this like recent thing, and they're not violent panic attacks. They're just like my world, like it's just it feels like there's the ceiling is about to fall and you're like, crap, the ceiling is about to fall. It's not like I feel like I'm dying, which it's not that at that
The
bad.
non-violent version of a panic attack is the ceiling about to fall. Still sounds very violent, and we'll talk about how to recognize this type of a thing in a second. But really, walk me through like what scares you about taking the time off. What makes it impossible to detach?
I think it's because there's so much to do that the thought of taking any time to not be doing something means that I'm just going to have more stuff to do later. So I'd rather just be doing it and getting on with it. And the problems that we're trying to solve are so big that it feels like every day should be spent trying to move the needle. Because there are people living in, like, if you really think about it, like 55% of the black community in the UK is on benefits, 40% is living in poverty. The youth unemployment problem in Africa is building every day. It's going to be, if it's not already, the youngest population in the world. There are people who are waking up every single day, doing everything they can just to like build something that could make a difference, and doing their best to like bootstrap and all of this, and are just being met with wall after wall after wall. And if what we're doing can help identify them, help them, make their lives easier, I don't know. I just feel like my problems or like my wanting to take a holiday kind of pales in comparison to like all of the different people that we could be helping, or the speed at which we could be going to make that to kind of solve that problem quicker. I will say this just like as a PSA. I do not put this on anybody else. No one else in my team is expected to work as hard as I do. I actually actively caution them against it because I do recognize it as a personality default rather than a this is what we should all be doing.
Yeah. Holiday is not just the champagne in an infinity pool looking over the sunset. It's not just about the indulgent. It's also about a sustainable way of working and living. I think a world without you in it would be a lesser version of the world with you in it. You owe it to yourself
Yeah.
to find the sustainable way of going about it. And of course, an indulgent holiday seems so spending $1,500 on a week. I mean, this could last a month or over if you use it the right way. And it looks like a splurge, but I mean, so many entrepreneurs are going through that. They don't want to. Every money that comes into the company goes back into the company, and but where will that take you? Being realistic now.
Yeah.
How often do the panic attacks need to arrive in order for an entrepreneur, for yourself to say, actually, that's 2 in a row now?
Yeah.
How often?
Well, hopefully not. So what I'm doing now is in response to the like recent stint, because I've never had panic attacks that often, and that for that like period of time before. So this is a new experience, an unfortunate, regrettable one, but a new one. And I'm certainly looking at. So my team has kind of rallied around me, and they've been fantastic. And we're working on how we allocate tasks more. So they all have access to my calendar, so they know how much I'm doing and when I'm doing it, so they can like organize themselves accordingly. But also they now have full access to my task list, and we all have access to each other's tasks lists, so they can see what is on my list that I've just not allocated to them, because I'm like, oh, I could do it, which does go through my brain way too much.
Yeah.
Rather than because not everyone on the team is full time, because we can't afford to have experts at that level full time yet. But what we can do is give them what the tasks that they do are tailored to specifically what they can do and they have to do for us to go forward. So I tend to take over the things that I can do and give them things that only they can do.
What brought you to where you are is you see a vacuum, you fill it up, you solve, you learn, you execute. And that's the selfishness syndrome of founders is often that you want to bring something big into the world, and going through the process of giving birth to that thing is also very validating, very reinforcing, very empowering. You're needed. People are relying on you, and pulling yourself out of that situation is very hard because there is an addictive, self-inflicted, masochistic pleasure that comes with that, with being needed, with responding, with reacting.
I see that. I hope that's not the motivation in my case.
It's not a motivation. It's not a motivation. It's a habit. It's a lifestyle. It's a pattern. Yeah. But it's definitely not a motivation.
Yeah.
Just as you sometimes need to find yourself withdraw from sugar, like, oh my God, I need to stay away from that thing. It creates cravings, right? It creates dependency. And we live as entrepreneurs, as founders, as people working in the innovation ecosystem, we create a life that's based around that, the validation of our necessity and our importance. And it's hindering in the long run. You know, I've drove myself into burnout in the past because of that, because I didn't know when enough is enough, because every time someone gave me a task, they also reinforced my image. They're like, you can do it. I know you can do it. I know you're busy, but you know, this one more project, and you don't want to let down. And you're like, with every task you're given or every thing that you've taken on board, there's another layer of your identity, and you're doubling down on a commitment to becoming a certain thing until it is no longer sustainable. So you'd be very, very quick to judge in a business model that's not sustainable. If you look from the outside on a company and you're saying, the unit economics doesn't work out, the margins don't work out, it costs too much to produce the product and it's being sold for too little.
Yeah. Or
there's only, you'll see the flaws immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Thankfully, I am relatively self-reflective, so I'm not ignorant of like the flaws in the way that we're running right now. But I will say that we're on the right path to changing it, because my big goal is to be able to do nothing for 3 months. Not necessarily not be there, but just I don't have anything that is relying on me to do. And we're moving towards that, because the fact that we have 6 other people who are doing things that I ordinarily would have been doing myself is remarkable, and I'm very grateful for that. And what we're doing now is actually just growing a lot quicker, so that those things that are on my list can just be farmed out to more people.
You said it yourself, you have people who are they see their work as an opportunity, so they have to work with stretch goals. They have to be doing things they've never done before. They're doing it for the first time. What will happen if you take one of your junior employees in a certain department of the company and give them a task that's huge, like that's insurmountable? What happened to that employee?
Well, if I had made a mistake and done that, that would only be a mistake.
Hypothetically. Hypothetically.
No, because the way that we assign tasks is based on co-agreement. So tasks are organized in strategy meetings, and those strategy meetings determine your time available, what you're capable of, your full understanding of the task, and then your agreement that this is the task in the time frame. So it would be very difficult for me to set an insurmountable task.
We're hypothesizing. There's a person, they're new to the team, and you're like, listen, we're launching in Sierra Leone, and 6 weeks, see you on the other side. What will happen to a person who've never done this before?
Oh gosh. Oh wow. Okay. To a person that's never done anything like this before?
They've had a small business, they closed it down, and now they came to work for you with that experience, and you're like, listen, I see it in you. You're launching Sierra Leone.
I think nothing like that, so I find it very difficult to place myself in this position. Oh my gosh, because that's a douchebag. That's a douchebag that would do that to someone. That's a douchebag experience that would just like go ahead and
because like from where that person is standing, the mission that you're asking them to achieve is it's impossible. Yeah. Like you're not setting them up for success. And I think With all due respect to wanting to be 3 months off,
Mm-hmm.
3 days is a more legitimate start. 3 days could be hard enough.
No, I can go 3 days.
You can
Because
go
of
3 days.
Yeah, okay, maybe. Yeah. No, yeah. Okay, I can't go 3 days. I will try 3 days.
I'll tell you what, I've learned that it's easier to take a week off work than a day off work.
Okay.
Because a day of work, you still have all those little tails of tasks that you want to complete, and you've worked up, and you're still like, you still remember the meeting you had to cancel for that week. It's hard, and you have to you're still, and then you just start unwinding, and then
You're back. Yeah.
With a week, you need to plan ahead, you need to push meetings, you carve yourself another day to return, you have to let people know, you put them out of office, and then first day you check your email once, twice, 3 times. Second day you do it the same. Third day you've gone out at night, you wake up, you're like, did I hear? I'm not looking at my phone. Fourth day you're already easing into the week. Fifth day, work what? So I'm not saying take a vacation long enough to forget your computer password. But I promise you that 1 day off will be harder than a week off.
Yeah. Okay. I remember in school you would have a summer break and then you'd forget how to write. You'd have to remind yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the 3 months, it's an aspirational goal. It's a really aspirational goal. I would want that. I would want the ability financially, mentally, to keep myself busy and not working for so long. But more often, what I found myself needing is not 3 months. It's 3 days.
Yeah. Well, it's not so much from a need perspective. It's from a ability to. It's actually from an ability to scale and grow perspective.
You can call it a need, and you can call it I don't know, something a little less personal. But do it now needs its leader, and you want to place yourself at the point where you are, peak performing, not just peak surviving, which is such a slippery slope because you don't know when you get there. You don't know when you're like, okay, now I'm actually operating on survival mode. And that's hard because as a founder who's working solo, who's doing everything for the first time, and so many people have experienced that, there's no one to raise a flag and say, hey, buddy, how's it going? No one see you when you clock in and when you clock out.
Yeah.
And you're so sensitive to other employees when they're going about it. I made the mistake of letting my employees know, listen, guys, if I'm working on the weekend, it doesn't mean you have to. I'm sending you emails because I don't want you to be bombarded on the Monday morning. So don't feel compelled to write back. I'm doing it for me, not for you. But guess what? Unless they're putting their phones aside, their emails are still in their phones. And when I send something, they at least see it.
Yeah.
At least see it. They're aware. The boss sent something.
Yeah.
It already occupies 5% of the cognitive presence, just knowing what's this in. And then if they read it and they want to answer, right? You start writing back the email, even if you haven't. You start writing back mentally.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really hard detaching. It's really hard. Tell me something else. The stressors of a founder. What are they?
Oh, okay. Depends how big your organization is. And how many clients you have or users you have, but paying people, that's one. Managing your reputation, that's another.
Managing your reputation.
Yeah, I've seen so many people try to cancel small businesses online, and it's okay, just managing client, because everyone feels like they can, for the smallest things, can really shout about it, and it's a small business trying to survive. So managing customer satisfaction actively and being really responsive on that.
All of a sudden, people are hijacking your time. You want to develop the product and the strategy, and there's a customer that wants their money back for whatever reason, and so it says, hey, this was not part of the plan.
So also finding people that can be champions loudly for you. That's one that you kind of have to build. I start most of my sentences with my team with my thought process is, because I think in processes, I think in steps, I think in rationality and making sure that everything is in the right place.
Yeah, you want to bring people on a journey.
But if you can't do that and things keep going haywire, which they are prone to do in a startup because you can't control the world, you can only control your reaction to it and try to pivot. Understanding that that everything is going to change and it's always going to keep changing, and being okay with that. That's a stress inducer in itself. Just trying to be okay with change.
How did you learn to feel comfortable with change, with rapidly moving things?
I realized I was terrible with change when, like I said earlier, I love volunteering. Like I love helping, and that was one of my main things when I was younger, and I was leading a team, and we had a massive like every leader together meeting, and the person sitting next to me, they were rebranding her team and the purpose of her team, and I started hyperventilating on her behalf because her team was going to change, not mine, nothing to do with me, but her. And that's when I knew I had a problem. Because if I'm hyperventilating because someone else is going through a change, then I have a real issue. And this was around probably 22, 23.
This is what happens when empathy is dialed all the way up.
I guess so.
You just feel what the people around you are feeling.
Yeah. So that was when I started thinking, and I said this to someone recently where she was asking how to deal with the difficulty of it all. Like it's always difficult. And I basically just said, you just have to get used to it. Like you're never going to be on stable ground. It's always going to be uncomfortable.
So how do you add stability in areas that suffer from a huge lack of it? What do you do to help structure work to reduce the uncertainty?
I don't know, because I haven't been able to do that. I've just been able to say I have to be okay with it.
The number one answer to reducing uncertainty, and it's the wrong one, is availability. You know, as long as I'm there, I can deal with that. I can deal with that. So you reduce uncertainty by being available. An email comes in, you answer it. A team member wants something, you're there. An investor from the West Coast calls you, you're like, yeah, of course I'll pick up. It doesn't matter the time. So availability. But availability is a consumable resource. It just...
Yeah.
You know, so that's the number one answer. And it's good for one time. If you're going through, if you're raising a round, you need to be available. The deal needs to have a certain pulse. If you're going through change management and you just told your team something dramatic that's about to happen, good or bad, you want to be available to what comes after, right? If you've just launched a product, you want to make sure that you capture everything that happens as the product is making its first steps into the world. But that can't be the only medicine to uncertainty. It can't be. It can't be. There's other things in your life that need to happen in parallel. The people in our lives deserve our presence. They deserve our attention. They deserve our love. We deserve to be able to nurture and foster hobbies. So, I mean, availability, excellent at certain points. Another thing I would inject into an entrepreneur's life to reduce uncertainty would be routine.
Yeah.
Some routine you can force on others. I don't take meetings before midday because I want to make sure that I am available to all the surprises. I go to bed at 10. I don't drink on weekdays. Every second weekend, I don't work. So introducing routine. And the best way for me to visualize routine is blocking stuff in the diary.
Yeah.
And when I see I have a color coding. So admin stuff or life stuff, it's green. Right? So when I look at my diary and I see I've put enough chunks of green, I'm like, oh, okay. That's a relief, you know?
Okay.
I give it the generic name admin, and it's for me to do emails, to respond, to read an article, to write an article. So I do that. And visualizing the chunks give me a sense of what week am I going into. Red is customer meeting or external meetings. When I see a lot of red in that week during work hours, I know I need to manage my energy in a way that helps me cope. I don't have the buffer times. So putting things in the diary, color coding it helps introduce some routine and communicating that to the team. Guys, unless you absolutely have to, I'd rather not take meetings before lunch. You know, fine. Or the other way around. Sometimes you have to impose the routine on your team as a leader. I used to start my Monday morning meetings at 9 a.m. with the team. They were the worst meetings we had. It suited my personality because I want to kickstart the week with a bang. I want to make sure that I'm getting everyone set up. But what I was actually doing was imposing my stress or rolling my stress over to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're there at 9 a.m., still zombies. They won't connect it on the weekend, hopefully. So they need a chance to catch up. Weak meetings, unproductive meetings that made me feel good for exactly 5 minutes of seeing my team there Monday morning, 9 o'clock, we're ready to kick ass. But actually, there's a jet lag.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a negative way of imposing a routine because I wasn't listening to what was going on. Personally, I think so. That's another reason to reduce another way to reduce uncertainty.
Well, one of the way that we kind of go about it, and this is why I couldn't go with the hypothetical, is because, like I said, I think in processes and steps and strategy. So we have a database of literally everything. If there is a question, you can search the database. There was always a document that has all of the information that you need. So that's one way that I've been able to kind of deal with the way things change, because we always have the information. If it changes, then we can just update that information, but it's still in one place where it's accessible by everyone, and everyone that needs it can have access to it. So everyone always has exactly what they need to do their job.
Excellent.
So that's one way I've kind of been able to deal with the needs of so many people.
So knowledge retention and making information accessible, it's another way to reduce uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are all good techniques, and I think one other way to reduce uncertainty is by accepting that it will always be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's not something new. Not every curveball is a surprise. It's part of doing what we chose to do. And it helps relieve the tension. And as leaders, we have the responsibility to communicate that calmness. We can communicate this calmness and experience it when we look after ourselves in a certain way. When I was reaching burnout in my last role, I was irritable. I was unpleasant to work with. Mm-hmm. I read back some of the emails I sent back then, and I'm not proud of them. Mm-hmm. You know, I wasn't solution oriented all the time. I was just angry that things weren't going my way. Mm. And my communication became lazy. Mm. You know, I know how to solve a conflict in a constructive manner 7, 8, 9 times out of 10. Mm. But when we're tired, when we're depleted, we don't approach conflict or adversity with the same patience, with the same empathy. Yeah. And I think that's huge, because we need to keep ourselves at a level that allows for these constructive solutions to come about. Mm-hmm. What else would you like to tell us about Do It Now, and how can our listeners promote and get involved with the amazing work you guys are doing?
Well, I can tell you about the name.
Please.
So Do It Now, as you can imagine, it speaks to urgency. It's basically it's Nigerian. Well, most people say now to kind of say you should have been doing this 10 minutes ago, which I suppose has kind of seeped into the way we do everything, or the way I approach life in general is this should have been done 10 minutes ago, let's get on with it. But in South Africa, actually, now has the opposite meaning of like, I have the intention to do it, but I haven't done it yet. So yeah, I sometimes think we'll have to change the name at some point to like
something that's more internationally recognizable. Yes, exactly. Actually, now in Spanish means a 4-hour siesta. And I don't know that that's the case, but you know, I can see how in a different world it would actually be meaning something completely different. Yeah. Fair enough. But it speaks to urgency.
It does. The problems are way too big to keep talking about them. I kept talking about all of these problems for so long, and I just got irritated being in rooms with people who were talking about it, but had kind of seemed to get off on talking about it and being really intellectual about the problems. And it was like, well, we could just do something, and we should have been doing something with all the privilege and the opportunity that we have. We should have been doing something. We should have done it a while ago. So yeah,
I think a lot of the listeners of the show would find that these self-serving circles that we sometimes find ourselves in, you've been to one, you've been to two, and now you start seeing them, and you know when you're in one. It's hard to be in a group and put yourself out and say, guys, let's just get on with it. Let's just do something in the real world rather than... I think that's also a situation that you can often find in startups, which is what problems to solve. are worth solving.
Yeah.
The fact that it hurts me doesn't mean it necessarily will benefit the world if it becomes a company or an app.
Yeah.
So I think going out there and starting to solve these problems will tell you a lot more about what actually needs to be done,
Yeah.
and how to go about it. So do it now. Walk me through the company's proposition, the business model. Who are the moving parts?
So Do It Now breaks itself up into initiatives. So we've got the different demographics that we're trying to support, and we support them through different methodologies. One is AfriTech XYZ. So that's our virtual accelerator for African tech entrepreneurs, where we have over about 120 mentors from around the world who are tech professionals, non-tech professionals, investors, government officials, NGO NGO professionals, people that have a vested interest in or a curiosity in innovation, or specifically in African innovation. So we pair them or match them with founders on the African continent that have been through a due diligence process or an application process and have been selected by a selection committee to be part of a cohort that gets access to resource. So we have AfriTech XYZ, which is one of the things that we do. Then we've also got Black and Good, which used to be an in-person incubator. We trained, it turned out to be Black women, but we didn't specifically aim for Black women. But we trained Black women on who were building social enterprises to become more tech savvy so that they could automate parts of their businesses and be able to support more people. Then we also have something called Common Core, which is going through a reiteration at the moment, but it is a debt fund. It's turning into a debt fund for Black-owned businesses in the UK. It was previously a grant fund that we were running, and we're trying to kind of make it more sustainable, because philanthropic funding cannot rely on my pocket alone, and we're just trying to make it more sustainable now that we've tested it and we know that it works and that we can identify and support people effectively. We've also got My Moon Landing, which is a local council support mechanism whereby we select 75 Black, female, LGBTQ+, and non-binary people to take part in a year-long program that educates them about activism, leadership, and entrepreneurship so that they can effectively work within the infrastructure and cultural systems and local systems that exist to affect systems change so that they can interact effectively with their local services, their local council, and design and develop their own things that could eventually be commissioned by local councils.
We will make sure to capture the information and the links in the show notes. So people who are interested in the initiatives and how they can get involved can easily access them. What are some ways for people to support the cause, support the business?
Well, we're always looking for patrons who are interested in supporting us, as we are a nonprofit and we are partly reliant on clients but also partly reliant on grants. So if you have any introductions to people that would be interested in hiring us as consultants for any diversity and inclusion work that they're doing, or have products or services that they think would benefit African tech entrepreneurs, Black women, LGBTQ or non-binary people, or are interested in talking to us about the debt fund that we're setting up, then we'd be very interested.
Excellent. And from speaking with you for the past hour, amount of areas that you've got to work in and peek into and can add value in is immense. I'd highly recommend anyone who's looking into those areas to get in touch. Personally, it's been a pleasure hearing about your journey. I sure hope the trajectory keeps it up and you find the resources to look after yourself as well as you do for your team. It's critical. It's critical that we do. It's part of our responsibility, and it's also the part of the hardest part of the journey. Bayo, any last words you'd want to share with our listeners?
Just a thank you to you for having me on. I'd wanted to meet you for a while, so I'm glad that I did. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
It's been our absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the work you're doing and the work that you will keep doing in the future. And with that, we're signing off.
Thank you.